When Danny Boulder from Houston, Texas, went on a solo trip to Mexico, he found a stray kitten in bad shape. Against advice from the locals, he took it with him to the U.S. with the intention of nursing it back to health. But when a couple days later 2 police officers showed up at his door, it was quickly made clear to Danny that he had made a big mistake in doing so. He should have just left the kitten where he found it. Before we start, can we get this video to 1,000 likes? Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Danny was on a solo vacation trip in Mexico at that time and was visiting a small village when he saw the kitten for the first time. It was covered in dirt from living on the streets and obviously very weak. His first thought was to take the kitten and bring it to a shelter. He went to approach the animal, but Danny was stopped in his tracks by shouts in Spanish from the locals. What were they saying? As Danny stood still now, and with the small kitten slowly approaching him, locals kept yelling to him not to pick up or touch the creature. With the kitten now clambering onto his boot, Danny decided for himself that these locals were probably just messing with him, as they all loved to fool with the foreigners visiting their village. He quickly, but carefully, picked up the animal and started making his way back to his car amid loud screams from the local residents. He didn't understand why there was such a fuss for the kitten. All he thought about was to give the poor creature some food and drink and then take him to an animal shelter. Danny started driving without having a clue where he was going to end up. He was just in search of a bigger city where they have pet stores or at least sell cat food suitable for kittens. Firstly, he wanted to drop the kitten off at a local shelter when he made his way back to his home in the United States. But as there were quite bad conditions in this part of Mexico, he had no idea what the quality of life that those would be able to offer was. Should he just keep it with him? He started to grow a bond with it already, and the only logical solution seemed to take it home with him. After the kitten had eaten and drank something, he seemed to revive a bit. It was about a day of continuous driving to get back home to Houston, Texas. When Danny passed the checkpoint at the border, he immediately got some questions about the kitten. He told them that he was traveling the world with his cat and that there wasn't really more to tell about. The border guards whispered a few sentences to each other, but Danny got permission to keep on, driving quite fast. As usual, it was really busy at the border. Danny thought they didn't want to spill too much time arguing about why he would bring a kitten back to the States. Danny felt relieved that he was allowed to continue on his journey to bring his furry friend to what he expected to be her forever home. Danny was able to go straight to the vet the next day. As the kitten kept running from him, Danny figured out in the meantime that he should give her a name. He decided that he was going to call her Missy from now on. With the help of some gloves, he managed to get her into the old cage of his previous cat, and they went to the vet. Danny just really hoped that this change in behavior was only temporary. He got a little tired of all the loud hissing. During the ride to the vet, it was clear that Missy was stressed and wanted to get out of the cage as soon as possible. She was hissing constantly and scratching the inside of the cage. Danny tried to calm her down, but when he moved his hand towards the cage, she started scratching him right away. After Danny arrived, the vet told him it would be better to sedate the kitten. In that way, he was able to investigate her in a safe way. As Danny told him that he picked the poor animal off the streets, the vet questioned how the weak kitten would react to injection. The vet judged that Missy looked very weak and malnourished, so an anesthetic could lead to death in such a case. With no other options, the vet decided to open the cage and get Missy out of the cage. But when he even got a little close, he was immediately scratched by her. What now? After discussing for a while, Danny and the vet decided it was best to take Missy home again. Danny was instructed to strengthen her over the next few days so that she would be fit enough to be put under sedation. The vet gave him a bag of special food that should speed up this process. The vet had not told Danny the exact truth as he was worried about the consequences of confronting him. He felt it wasn't up to him to tell him such things. That's why the vet grabbed his phone and called the police to inform them so that they could deal with this animal. The vet never intended to examine Missy. He already noticed that something was not right from the moment they walked through the door. He used Missy's weakness as an excuse to get Danny out of the clinic so he could call the police and let them sort this out. Danny had no idea of the vet's actual intentions, and he was just going to do as he was told. bring Missy home and start giving her the special food so she strengthens up. On the way back, Missy finally calmed down. He was even able to pet her a little bit. Unknown to Danny, it was about to get a whole lot worse than the situation was. Danny was looking out of his window when he saw a police car with 2 officers pull up in front of his house. He immediately noticed that they didn't come to talk in peace. They were really looking for something. Danny opened the door and started to greet the police officers. But before he could say anything, he was pushed in, as it were, and the officers rushed in. Danny was stunned for a second and couldn't understand why all this was happening. When Danny realized that they just ran past him without giving a reason, he started to get mad. He ran back to his living room and screamed, "I demand an explanation." While searching, one of the police officers yelled that they were looking for the monster. What did they mean by that? All Danny could think of was that they would come for Missy. But how could they ever know the cat was in his house? And worse, why did they call her a monster? Before he could either confirm or deny their allegations, Missy had already shown her curious face. There it is, one of the officers screamed. The police quickly went after her, chasing Missy through the house until they managed to corner her. After a while, the police officers finally got hold of Missy. The officer told him that they did not really know why they were here either, and that they were just following orders. All they knew was that the tip came in from the local vet, and that Danny should probably call him for some answers. As the officers were putting Missy in the cage and taking her to the car, Danny rang the vet immediately. He got the assistant of the vet on the phone because the vet himself urgently had to go to another location. It was clear by her reaction that she had expected this call. The assistant of the vet explained that he had lied to Danny and hid the truth about his newfound companion out of fear that he would not take the news well. The vet had immediately spotted that Danny had not actually brought a sick kitten with him, but an endangered young Mexican bobcat, something he should not be in possession of under any circumstances. Danny had not told the vet he had found it in Mexico, so he had assumed Danny acquired the animal illegally. Later that day, Danny was called to give a statement about how he had come into the possession of the bobcat. Although his true story might have sounded a bit far-fetched, the police believe it. They decided to not press any further charges against him after doing a search of his house and not finding any evidence of illegal practices. The bobcat was handed to a rescue center where it would be allowed to grow for a year or two, and then they would return the animal back to Mexico.